In the 16th century, a foreigner arrived in Japan and rose to become something no outsider had ever been. A samurai. He stood beside the most powerful warlord in the country, fought in his final battle, and then, in a single moment, he vanished from history completely. No grave. No record of his death. Nothing. His name was Yasuke. And to this day, no one knows where he came from, or what became of him. To understand how strange his story is, you have to picture Japan in the year 1579. The country had been at war with itself for over a century. It was almost completely closed off from the outside world. Most people living there had never seen a foreigner in their entire lives, and they had certainly never seen a black man. Then, one day, he arrived. He came in the company of an Italian Jesuit missionary named Alessandro Valignano, most likely from somewhere in East Africa, though his true origin was never written down. He was tall, far taller than the men around him, powerfully built, and by every account, impossible to ignore. As he walked through the streets, crowds gathered around him. People climbed over each other just to get a look. In one town, the crowds grew so large and so frantic to see him that people were reportedly hurt in the crush. To the Japanese of that era, he did not look like a traveler. He looked like something out of a legend. And word of this giant, dark-skinned stranger began to travel, faster than he did, all the way to the most dangerous man in Japan. That man was Oda Nobunaga, a warlord so ruthless and so brilliant that he had come closer than anyone in 100 years to conquering all of Japan. He burned monasteries. He crushed armies. His enemies called him the Demon King. And when Nobunaga heard about the African giant walking through his lands, he demanded to see him with his own eyes. What happened next became one of the most famous moments of the encounter. When Yasuke was brought before him, Nobunaga refused to believe that his skin was real. He was convinced it had to be ink painted on honno. So he ordered the man to strip to the waist and be scrubbed hard to wash the color away. But the harder they scrubbed, the more the skin gleamed. It did not come off, because it was not paint. And in that moment, Nobunaga's disbelief turned into something else. Fascination. Here was a man unlike anyone in his entire empire. Strong, calm, from a world Nobunaga could barely imagine. He did not want to send this man away. He wanted to keep him close. What Nobunaga did next was almost unthinkable for the time. He took the foreigner into his own service. He gave him a house. He gave him a stipend, a salary, paid like one of his own men. He gave him a sword. And he gave him a name that history would remember. Yasuke. For a foreigner to be armed and kept at the side of the most powerful lord in Japan was extraordinary. Some accounts say Nobunaga was so proud of him that he considered making him a lord in his own right. Yasuke learned to speak Japanese well enough to talk with Nobunaga directly, and the warlord was said to enjoy his company more than almost anyone else. He was not a servant kept for show. He carried Nobunaga's weapons. He stood in his inner circle. He had, in every way that mattered, become a samurai. A black samurai, in a country that had never seen one, serving the man who was about to unite the entire nation. For a brief moment, Yasuke was living a story too incredible to be true. And then, in the summer of 1582, it all collapsed in a single night. On a June night in 1582, Nobunaga was resting at a temple in Kyoto called Honno-ji, with only a small guard around him. He believed he was safe. He was not. One of his own top generals, a man named Akechi Mitsuhide, turned against him. Under the cover of darkness, Akechi surrounded the temple with thousands of soldiers and attacked. Nobunaga woke to the sound of gunfire and screaming, and quickly realized there was no escape. The most powerful warlord in Japan was trapped, betrayed by his own side. Rather than be captured, he chose to end his own life, and the temple was set ablaze around him. And Yasuke was there. He did not run. He took up his sword and fought against Akechi's army, in the middle of the fire and the chaos, defending his lord to the end. When the temple fell, Yasuke made his way to where Nobunaga's son was making a last stand, and he fought there too. He fought until there was nothing left to fight for. And then Akechi's soldiers took him alive. Here is where the story should end, the way it ended for almost everyone loyal to Nobunaga that night, with a sword. But it did not. When Yasuke was brought before Akechi, the traitor did something strange. He refused to execute him. According to the records, Akechi declared that this man was not Japanese, that he was a beast, and therefore should not be treated as a samurai and should not die like one. Instead, Akechi ordered that he be taken to the Christian church in Kyoto, the mission of the very Jesuits who had first brought him to Japan. And Yasuke was handed over, alive. And that is the last time Yasuke appears anywhere in the historical record. After the doors of that mission closed behind him, there is nothing. No account of his death. No mention of a grave. No letter, no note, no story that can be confirmed. A man who had stood beside the ruler of Japan, who crowds had once trampled each other just to see, simply stepped out of history and was gone. He was there, and then he was not. So, what happened to him? The truth is, no one knows, and that silence is exactly why he has never been forgotten. Some believe he made it back to the Jesuits and quietly left Japan on a ship, returning to the world he came from. Some believe he changed his name and lived out his life in the country as an ordinary man, hidden in plain sight. And some believe he died in another battle, unnamed, his story lost with him. Every ending is possible. Not one of them can be proven. For centuries, Yasuke faded into little more than a footnote, a strange rumor at the edge of Japanese history. But the pieces that survive are real. A foreigner, most likely from Africa, who arrived in a closed and warring country, earned the trust of its most feared warlord, became a samurai, and then vanished without a trace. History remembers the powerful, the ones who won. It rarely remembers the outsider who stood beside them. And yet, almost 500 years later, we are still asking the same question they asked when he first walked through those streets. Who was he? If this story held you until the end, subscribe to Yogan. Because Japan is full of them, and most you have never heard.